Okay, here we are. Blimey, lots of hassle there getting the camera going. Hey, Sam here. We love guitars, and welcome back, sort of, after the honeymoon period. So Claire and I just got back Monday, so nearly a week ago now from our honeymoon, and had time to clean up this little fella and put it back together again after having enjoyed playing this away in the Maldives for a couple of weeks or so, and it performed fantastically out there. It was just perfect to take it apart, put it in the suitcase in two halves, and then just take a screwdriver and reassemble it on site. And it's dead simple guitar, so it just went back together again. Perfect configuration, and yeah, many hours, happy hours playing on the beach in paradise on this old thing. So it really came into its own a couple of years after having made it, so I'm really pleased with how it performed as an actual travel guitar. Oh, it's got a bit of rust building up there or something. Yeah, it got really grubby because it was very humid atmosphere out there. It was monsoon season, so there's plenty of water around in the air, and this is showing signs of that, but who cares? It's a working guitar, go anywhere guitar, so I really enjoyed playing it out there, and came back and pretty much straight away to get into the mood of things, just cracked straight into making another one. Excuse me. Actually, I did start working on a piece of old oak which came from the old lintel that we rescued, but having done that, it's not stable. This thing's got cracks and splits, so as much as I like the idea of making stuff out of 400-year-old oak, it's not solid enough a piece of wood to do that with. So I reverted back to the white oak supply that I already had, some pieces ready made, and so this is the next one coming along. And I started off and did the pickup cutout for the humbucker and the electrics cutout. I started doing those by hand, which is fun. I quite enjoyed chiseling it, and then I spent rather a long time cutting out this little lip for the cover to go in, which fits it quite nicely. It's not exactly perfect. I've got to get better at doing that, but I cut it a bit close to the edge in terms of dimensions, so it's crumbled away a little bit of the edge here, which I need to fill with oak wood filler, which I don't have at the moment. Anyway, so I kind of got a bit frustrated, thinking I've got to do this got to get more handy with a router, because I've got a router and I've just got to use it. So I made a template and finally plucked up the courage to route the neck pocket, and as it happens, it's perfect, although the neck that I had to go in it isn't, so that ended up going in the bin. The only other neck I've got here which sort of fits it is this one. I don't know if you can see that, but it's a nice fit anyway. I'm not going to use that one because it's already painted. Now I'm going to have to hang it up. It's painted and it doesn't suit the nice oak on that, so this will be used for another time. Hello. You're looking for a hammock? Gosh, one hammock. That'll be $100, please. Thank you. Make sure the Morris doesn't get in here. He's not allowed on this trip. Yeah. So anyway, I sort of set everything up, and although it wasn't perfect setup, I did get a good routing out of it. So confidence is now increased, and I'm going to use that in future to do everything, including this little step, which will be much more accurate. The reason the cutout is so big is actually to get both to the pickup, easily to the pickup slot, and to the bridge post for earthing. It makes sense that the cutout has to go all the way to the centre line here, but there may be a more effective way of doing it. Although I quite like it because it reduces the weight a bit, so it doesn't really matter as long as that all lines up nicely. The grain isn't perfectly matched, but what the hell. This is only number 3 of the oak casters. This is number 1, probably one of the best ones of there'll ever be. That's going back in the house for active playing. Hadn't played it that much for a while before going on holiday, but it was such fun that I want to keep it out. I took the Zoom GX3 effects unit with me, and that is a battery operated unit, and it just worked perfectly as a beach guitar. Headphones on, really great quality sound. Okay, so I've got a slightly different camera set up here. This Sony Action Cam did good service out there on holiday, on our honeymoon, but actually it struggled to focus underwater. So the thing they never tell you when you buy these cameras is that the waterproof cases they come with dome-shaped lens covers on them are, what are you looking for? Oh yeah, blade amnesty at the back there. Yeah, the covers distort everything, and actually both the Sony Action Cam and the GoPro, both of which we took in waterproof cases, neither of them could focus underwater. So actually, funnily enough, the most effective underwater camera that we had in the whole time there was either the old flip camera, which is in the house, or the iPhone 6 in a special waterproof pouch, which, believe it or not, was perfectly good. The only trouble with that one is you have to come out of the water to change the settings, because it doesn't register your finger touch underwater. Anyway, enough of all that. I'm back, rested, looking forward to a weekend of work, which I've got right now. I've got 3 guitars for Luke, and this is the first of Luke's guitars, and introducing you to the Harley Benton SG copy thing. Now Luke is allergic to cats, so part of this today is going to be keeping Morris from coming in here and getting involved in this. He likes to do it normally, but I'm going to keep him away from it this time because Luke's not a fan of that. The reason I put some tape, by the way, over the strings is this guitar has a strange reciprocal note pinging off here, and it's partly because I think the break angle off the back of here isn't enough, but the problem is can't go any lower with the stop piece. Actually, you might be able to if you hammered these in or drilled those in a bit further, but the only way to increase that angle is to raise the action, which of course we don't want to do. In fact, we want to take the action slightly down. So the chances are this reciprocal whine, it's not huge, but I heard it, will probably increase rather than decrease. Anyway, so we've got this basic 70 quid or so Harley Benton SG, maybe 75, 80 quid, something like that. And it's all told, it's not a bad looking thing. It's in several pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces by the looks of it, but not bad looking, nothing special looking, and it's, you know, it's a very basic unit, but probably a really good starter guitar. But it has a very chunky neck profile, which may not be to everyone's liking. I don't mind it personally. Anyway, the first thing I've done, it came with a few strings missing, and the existing nut on it was not good. So I've already replaced the nut, because I did that off camera because I wanted to get started with this, and obviously I need the nut in place to set the action, the neck relief and the first fret action, before I can then get on and do everything else that needs doing. So this is basically going to get the full fret, full setup. Being a Harley Benton, it's probably going to need fret leveling. Once we've chosen the playing action at both ends and the neck relief, it's likely, I expect, listening to how it's sounding down there already, I suspect we'll need some fret leveling, but that's fine. It's kind of par for the course for a guitar of this quality. And then I guess there's only one other little adjustment here, and that is that this tuner here is annoyingly out of position. So I'm going to remove, once we've done the initial, or the setting up and the fret leveling, I'm going to take off this tuner and just slightly fill the hole and slightly reposition it, so that it doesn't have that annoying aspect. Now this, I've replaced the nut here with a bone nut, which has gone in, slotted straight in, nice fit, very nice overall fit. It's got too much material above the action here above the slots to begin with. So once we've got the action right, we'll take a bit of that excess material away so it doesn't feel so bulky. But apart from that, it shouldn't be any surprises. Oh dear. Everything's not in tune, so I need it in tune to get going with. Again, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, it's just to keep it in the close to the playing tension on the guitar. Now this, I'm not going to play this thing right now. It's interesting that it hasn't got a lot of room on this. It's the right nut, but it's actually, it could be fine bit. It's hard to balance this. The neck is narrow, it's quite narrow, and if you balance it with this nut, you've got to be very, very precise to get it in place. So it doesn't tolerate a hell of a lot of pulling in the downward direction. I don't want to have to make a custom nut for this, and I don't really think I've got anything else here that has a different pitch, if you like. It's a pretty standard. Looking at it, it's a full width nut. I'm just wondering if there are any slightly narrower pitch. No, it's the exact pitch. So it feels like this neck is just unusually, fractionally narrower than most guitars. So as I say, it's exactly the spread of the strings is exactly right. It's slightly different on that one. That's for a slightly fractionally narrower nut, but this is a plastic. I don't know what that is exactly, but the absolute standard SG nut feels to send this just a fraction too close to the edge, and it's very difficult to gauge it because there's nothing worse than slipping off with the low strings. I would have personally gone on the first time I put this nut on, I erred on the side of a little bit extra room for the top E, and actually now I've got it balanced perfectly, it still doesn't feel right to me. So I'm just going to have a look at any of these other things, but they are all the same gauge or pitch, and I'm a bit loath to have to cut a custom nut for this, but it may well be how to do it. I mean, in a way that's what Luke's ended up trying to do with this plastic thing that he's put on there. Not fantastic. Let's have a look. As I say, nothing else I've got here is any different. They're all the standard SG. Now, what if I measured this neck, whether it would actually be fractionally narrower? Well, I could look up online and see the specs. Okay, so this one here is, gosh, just marginally narrower. I'm not even sure it is. It's I would say it's 1 millimeter narrower in total. 1 millimeter narrower. I just wonder whether that's actually got staggered, slightly displayed thing. But if we would go with this, then we get the top E comes in a fraction. So I think, I have to say, much as I wasn't planning to do this and I hoped that this nicely fitting nut was going to do the job, I can't leave this as is. So before we even go any further, I'm going to see if I can, oh, I'm sorry about the sound effects, I'm going to tap this off, which is the second time I've done this now, which is a bit annoying. I'm going to use Chris's tool here because it's going to put a load all the way across it. There we are. It all comes off nicely, very simple. Now if we put this one in, we've got it's too low. If we put this, this is the right pitch of string spacing. No, it's exactly the same. What else have we got? Well, that one works, but again it's the same spacing. It's not going to gain us anything unless I'm mistaken, which I don't think I am. Let's put them up against each other. No, it's the same width. The only alternative I've got is to cut a custom one, which is a complete kerfuffle, which is really slightly disappointing. Now there's a slightly narrower one. Let's see if that one has any chance to see it now. See, that's already too low in the slot. We'd have to shim that, but it has the right spacing. I think we might have to end up using that with some black packing. So first of all, it's too wide. So we'll start shaving it down. So yeah, this is what it takes. So too wide in that direction, so it's going to take quite a bit of filing down, and then we're going to need a black shim to get it upwards to the right thickness. So this is we're going to get this on the tape the whole way through. Tape the video. It's summer, so everybody's in their garden doing stuff, so hopefully with the mic pointing this way there will be more of what's going on here, but you never know. Anyway, so I'm just getting this to fit nicely into the slot, which it does, and now I'm going to let's just clean the bottom of the glue before we go any further, and then just make it flat so there's a nice join. It sits nicely on top of the shim that I'm going to cut, which is going to be out of plastic. I've got a couple of different gauges to work with, and let's have a feel. Okay, that's quite a bit too low. I'm looking at there's quite a lot of gaps under these threads. They're not brilliant, these Harley Benton things. So I'm just going to cut this now from, we've got helicopters flying overhead now for some reason. Just going to cut out our shim. I'll cut it double the length in case we need to double it up, so and then chuck it on the floor, and it's just about spot on really thickness. That's not a bad guess actually. Cut the end. Might be just fractionally wide on one end, but it's not so bad. Playing it by eye. Right, let's put it on there and see what we've got. That is probably enough of a shim, and it would require a little bit of black paint under there just to clear it up. And I'm also going to just shave down this one side of it just fractionally so it doesn't stick out at all. Just narrowing it down a tiny fraction. It's a beautiful sunny day out there. I'm not at all sad that I'm doing guitars in the shed, when there's such a sunny day outside. Let's have a look. A tiny bit more on the width. Quite difficult to work plastic because it's so thin and bendy, but you can just about do it. Okay. Yeah, this is sorry you can't see that. This is basically kind of imposed on us really by the need to raise this up and to use this. Hang on a minute, am I using the right one? No, I don't think I am. It grabs the wrong thing altogether. The need to raise it up because we are basically, let's make sure this is right, because we have to use a narrower pitch for the string spacing, which is quite strange. I've not had this problem with one of these, but it seems especially narrow. Okay, now I have to just put this string back on for a second and just test it. See, that's still hitting the deck on there, so I'll need a second one just to check. Ideally I'd not want to use two pieces of, or I might end up going for one from a thicker material. That's probably the important point. I'm going to use a piece of pickguard material. I'm not sure how well this will cut it, but let's see. Yeah, cut away. Come on. Now, a little bit of a crude way of doing things, but once cut, I can now file down to size at leisure. So, let's see what we've got. This is quite a thick piece. Of course I've gone and cut it too far, haven't I? Let's try that again. Right. Nut, thank you. Okay, so that's, need to cut it slightly longer. It's quite difficult to gauge the amount we need to chop off, but that'll do. I'll just keep going until we get it right. Okay, so now I'm just going to flatten this down on all sides. It's a nice thick piece of, I think it's 3-ply pickguard material, so it's nice and thick. It'll shim this nut very well. Now if I were to glue the two things together, then I've got myself something I can work it down to match the edge, which I think is what I'll do. So let's just check the two together. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to glue it on and let it set, and I'll come back to it. I'll work it then as a single piece. I'll glue it and I'll clamp it as well and leave it for a bit. Small clamp. What was that? Who knows? Let's push it into shape. And if I can, just line it up on the flat and then clamp it. Nice. That should happily sit there for a while and firm up, and then we can do a bit more filing it down and just make it all the same shape, and then we can use it. And it's really only for doing this for the spacing of those strings. You've got to get that spacing right, otherwise everything will be too close to the edge on this guitar. And that's the problem that Luke obviously had with it first of all. So I'm just going to put various things back in the nut box for another time. Yeah, just slightly on the narrow side this is, so it'll be interesting to see the difference that the 1mm makes to the amount of, as Luke put it, the amount of real estate in either side of the strings. But it is important because there's nothing worse than it falling off when you're trying to play it. So, I mean, the other option is to make a custom one, where you have full control over what's happening, but it's not. It takes even longer. So we'll go with this version for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to stop this for a second, take a little 5 and come back when it's done. I've jumped forward in time, bit of a cheat really, but it took a while to do this, so you have to forgive me. I've had to build a custom nut for this thing, and that took quite some time. It's slightly narrower neck, so it needed this custom nut to spread the strings more accurately, and while I was there, then it obviously made sense to cut the slots down to the right action, so that let's move that out of the way. Yeah, so that it's ready to go really. So I've kind of jumped ahead some of the stages in the setup, so if you need to know them, they're on pretty much all of my videos. But the point here is we've now got a new nut in place made from bone. I'll soften off the edges with a little file a bit later on, but right now it's in place, and the action over the first fret now is really low. A little bit of zizzing off the frets, so I haven't tried them all out. So yeah, it looks like it could use some fret leveling, which I'll do shortly. Just checking the relief. There's a fair bit of relief now, there wasn't before. Obviously it's not staying very well in tune because the strings have been. Well, that was always going to happen. The G string wasn't even properly on. Let's see if I can get it back on again, just for the sake of. Neighbours, please. Right, I'm going to have to just get on with this and get another G string on here. I'm hoping this will just stay on long enough to be able to do the fret leveling. It's a tricky one. That's the trouble with trying to put an old string on, and it's just not playing ball really. Get in the slot and stay on, you little son of a gun. No, it doesn't want to go on. Desperate to jump off. Yeah, like I said, the big difficulty. So I'm sure you don't really need to see me arsing around with strings that don't want to play ball, but yeah, I'll just get a pliers and see if I can hold that on long enough to get it to bite, but it's unlikely. I'm just trying to save myself having to go around the houses and find another set of strings to do this with. No, it's not going to bloody do it. Talk about annoying. Chances are I haven't got another string in any set that's going to work, but that's what happens when you get it comes in an incomplete set. So let's try the G from here. Put that out of the way, get this off. altogether because it's wasting my time and yours. I only need this on long enough to do the fret leveling. So it's taken a fair old age to get to this stage with the new nut, but that's the price you have to pay, I'm afraid. Now we're here, I can get on with fret leveling and get the rest of it sorted. We should be straightforward now, but okay, that'll have to do for now. I'm going to take a break, get a cup of tea, see you in a minute. Oh, hey, oh, stop. Okay, let's get on with this. So, rushed ahead a bit, jumped the gun, but anyway, we have, let's take these things off. We have this Harley Benton SG with little strap buttons, keeping it on, and I'm going to get on, do this thing. Now, I had to do a complete custom nut job, nut build, so that took a bit of time, but anyway, here I am, back to do it. So, right, there we go, nut the right size, done, everything set, action set, nice and low, not as much brake angle as I would like over there, but it's nothing we can do about that if we want a low playing action. Wow. Ah, look at that, listen to that. I can actually make it sing. Weird stuff. Anyway, right, so I'm going to get on and do what needs doing, which is the fret leveling. Oh, I'm totally rusty. I haven't done this since before. It was probably about, wow, it's over 3 weeks ago. So I've had a whole honeymoon in between. So here we go. Let's do the usual thing. And so what am I doing? I'm going for a nice low action. Got it there. I need the Allen key, this one, to tune the truss rod, and I'm going to just pick my launch pad here, there and over there, something like that, and then I'll just put a piece of tape down once I've got it distance correct. So there and there, completely wrong by 2 frets, but there you go. Right, so there's a good spread across the neck, a little bit of space at either end, which is fine, and I'm just going to mark the fingerboard, the neck, at the point where I'm going to do the fret leveling. Now somebody made a comment on YouTube the other day and said they just didn't understand why I didn't do it what they thought was the proper way, which, to be fair, you know, is a familiar way to them. And it's interesting when somebody asks that. You know, they've got it. They look at it for the first time and they think you're wrong. It can't be done. And so your perspective then is immediately, ha! You're doing it wrong. Why don't you do it the right way? And it's obvious that I'm doing it this way because this way works for me. Sorry about this. That's one thing I just have to go with. Yeah, so obviously I do this because it works. But it's really interesting the way people phrase their question, which is, you know, I think the commenter said they wouldn't do it that way themselves, which is fine. And even when I said, well, I do it this way because it works for me, they still couldn't get their head around the fact that, you know, it still feels wrong to them, even if I say that it works for me. And I find that's the interesting bit, you know, that it's you know, how much, when you have a point of view on something, how much, it's a bit like a dream, you know, when you wake up from a dream and you can't, you wake up in a certain mood because of the dream and you just cannot shift it, even though you know it's daytime and the thing you were happy or sad about isn't real. You just cannot help but be coloured by that feeling and that mood. And it's a bit like that when you have a point of view about something. It becomes incredibly difficult to shed it. So for this commenter, you know, they're still in that space in their head. And I'm not, you know, laughing at it. It's a very natural thing. But he was still in that headspace of, you know, it's wrong. You don't do it this way. And why would you? You must be mad to do it this way. So rather than sort of react to it negatively, I just hopefully, you know, explained it as best I could, and you know, just carried on making the point that, you know, evidently I do it this way because there's a, you know, there's a result that I get from it which works for me, and you know, it's quite interesting to see how, I say, how difficult it is for somebody to accept that what you're saying is your experience, and also for them to accept that you go on the basis of your experience, not what they think it should be. And I've had that so many times on comments on YouTube where people, you know, and I've done it in the past too, you know, where you look at something and you have this impression that you're right about something, and you get so kind of caught up in being right that you really don't pay any attention to the other person's experience, and you sort of, like I say, without meaning to, you can't help but just go off on being right in your head. And of course it doesn't pay any attention to somebody else's experience, and in being so right about it, you don't learn anything about their experience. Now, you might have noticed there, I just recalibrated that truss rod because I wasn't confident that it was matching the curve. So here we go. Let's see, we'll get back into cutting, see what we've got. Now it's good to do this to begin with and then stop and re-examine the cut and see what's actually happening, because that's a really good diagnosis or diagnostic. So we've got metal cutting here, 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 so pretty much all the way up. So I'm going to carry on using this as it's currently configured, and I'll recalibrate it again in a minute for the next strip, the B strip. But yeah, it's really funny that if you are watching this for the first time and your instinct goes, no, you can't possibly do it like that, why don't you do it the proper way? Make your neck flat, damn it, and do it the proper way. You just have to, I invite you to try and let go of that certainty that that is the right way. Yeah, do encourage you to risk accepting or considering that it might not be the only way, and certainly it might be the right way for you, but it certainly isn't the right way for me. And I think the one thing that probably makes potential friends into enemies quite quickly is when you, and I've done this myself, you know, when you decide somebody's doing something wrong and you then get off on telling them how right you are and how wrong they are, the thing you automatically do is you negate their experience. You know, it's like saying everything you know about doing this, all the happy customers that have done this for, and all the guitars, you know, you've watched, or maybe watched on this channel, have gone from not playing notes to playing beautiful clean notes because of what I've done. It's like there's a sort of absolute arrogance that we think our rightness is enough to negate all of that experience, which is absolutely insane. You know, my experience is that this works, and it's crazy for somebody to come along and say it doesn't, it's wrong, it does not work, you are wrong. It's just absolutely mad. Anyway, needless to say, and I don't mean this in any unpleasant way, but needless to say, I don't take somebody else's certainty about being right as a, I don't take that as my start point. I take my own experience, take the evidence of my eyes and the view of my customers who have set the guitars up. That's what I take as the start point for deciding whether or not this works. So anyway, I've talked about this many times on these videos. If I carry on talking about it, it is because I'm still slightly surprised at that. We people can do that. We're so attached to our idea or our point of view and being right about it that we really do. We ride roughshod over somebody's lived experience, which of course is far more revealing and informative than our intellectual idea about something. So if you're ever in that position where you see somebody doing something like in the guitar world and you get this warm, smug feeling that he's doing it wrong and I know better. And like I said, I've been there and I've done that myself, so I know exactly what the feeling's like. I do invite you just to try and be curious about it as opposed to contemptuous, and I think that's a really good way of thinking about this, and it's a real recipe, by the way, for improved relationship and communication, is to try and, whenever you see something unfamiliar, to genuinely come from a position of curiosity and not contempt. It's an amazingly difficult thing to do. The thing is, I'm going to have to put a band or rubber or something on there. It's making a sympathetic harmonic and it's really annoying. Anyway, that's pretty good. So what I'm doing is I'm using this method to, as you can see, to level the frets with the guitar in the playing position. And while those of you who've only ever done it the other way might look at this and be astonished and think it's impossible, you have to remember that this truss rod, I'm curving it to match the relief in the neck which I've dialed for the action I want this guitar to have. So it is completely sensible when you stop and think that I'm leveling a curved neck with a curved beam, effectively. That's all that's happening. It's the same as leveling it with a flat neck with a flat beam, but for one thing, and this is where it improves. And this person was watching this video. This is the critical difference that's hard for you to get because I don't understand it technically, but when you, it would be fair to say that leveling, just all things being equal, leveling these frets with a curved rod to match the curvature in the neck is exactly the same up to a point as leveling the frets with the neck flattened, except this is more effective for one reason, and that is that when the guitar is in its playing position, as it is now with the neck under load, you're leveling it with the effects of compression, squeezing of the neck in play. So we're doing the leveling with that compression already affecting the neck, which means that when we come to restring the guitar later on and put it back under pressure, the same we'll get back the same level as we had while we're doing this. If you the difference is if you level your frets with the neck off, passively flattened with a truss rod adjustment, and then you have no strings on but you just level with a flat beam, you haven't got compression effects at play yet, so you've leveled it before introducing compression effects. Then when you restring it, you introduce compression effects, and that throws out the relative levelness of the frets just slightly, but enough to make this that I'm doing now a slightly more accurate method. And that's why I do it this way. It's one of the reasons why I do it this way. So it is a little bit more accurate. Not a vast amount, but enough to make it worth doing for me. The other benefit, as you can see, is exactly what I'm getting now, which is because it's strung, I can only level as much as I need to free up or if you like, make the notes play on the action I've chosen. So when you're leveling frets with the strings off and your neck flattened, you are leveling to an intellectual or an abstract, if you like, idea of level. You're going either until all the frets have had some metal taken off them, or usually, or commonly, you're leveling until your fret rocker tells you that everything is 100% level. And the point is, that's great, there's nothing wrong with doing that, except the truth is, fret metal is precious, it's the life of the frets. And really, you don't want to take any more off than you absolutely have to. And logically, to get the action I want playing the way I want it, I don't need it to be absolutely 100% level, because I'm not playing at below 1.5 millimeters. I only need it to be as level as I need it to be to play the action I've chosen properly, and that's another benefit of this. There you go. And that means that I stop before, well, I don't have to keep on going. I take as little metal off as possible to achieve the action that I want. Now you can't do that at all with the passive flat neck method. You know, it's just impossible. You have to go to some arbitrary point, and that is usually a point, or it's usually the absolute point where your fret rocker shows you've got no relative level unevenness between the frets, and that's if you like 100% flat, but it's more flat than it's more leveled than you actually need. So leveling it that way, you've usually taken off more material than you strictly need to take off in order to make the action you've chosen play. So this is a really subtle but important difference, and you know, it might still sound strange to you, but once you've tried doing it this way, this is interesting. It's quite a lot of difference here in this adjustment. Once you've got used to doing it this way, you'll realise that those benefits, although they sound infinitesimally small at this point, you realise those benefits are. What am I doing? I'm going the wrong way. Dunderhead. Too much talk, not enough think. Yeah, once you've done it a few times, you will get to realise that the difference, these differences are tiny, but they are major in terms of actual process. I'm just going to see what this aircraft is. Helicopter. Yeah, straight overhead. Yeah, so I guarantee if you tried it, if you're slightly critical, I guarantee if you tried it, you'd realise that the flat neck leveling method is a bit dogmatic. You know, you're sticking with it because somebody's told you that's the right way and the only way to do it. And actually, I would suggest, for the reasons I've mentioned and others, this is a better way. So it's slightly more accurate because it levels the frets with the compression effects at play already in the neck, so that it literally will retain the relative levelness much better because you've already factored that compression in at this point now. It's more respecting of the fret metal, and so you only take away as much as you need to achieve the playability you're aiming for. Yeah, those are the two principal reasons, I think. I can't think of any more, but those are big enough to make it well worth doing. And of course, you know, when you make it, what I like about it is it's a sort of ancillary bonus, if you like. It's just it comes with the turf. But what I like about this is that I know, as I'm doing this, I know what the result is. It's there in front of me right now. I don't have to level it, then put some strings on and hope that it sounds great. This is what we're going to end up with. It's right in front of me. And that's with an action which is very low. In fact, right now, down on the A string, it's ridiculous actually, it's 1 millimetre. That's way too low, but there we go. I've aimed for a low one. And then I'm going to just recalibrate for the last strip. So yeah, this is great, because what we're getting now is what we end up with. This is the work done. There's no sort of let's level and hope we've got it. Let's level and do some setup. We've already done the setup, and that's the beauty of this process, is that you choose the action you want and you make the frets conform to what you've chosen. Unlike most guitars that you get are the other way around. Your action is set by the condition of the frets, and you just have to accept it. And that's, you know, most second-hand guitars, even new guitars you'll ever get, somebody either in the factory or in the shop or the previous owner will basically have tried to level the frets, try to lower the action to get a nice low action, and they will have encountered the choking effect of uneven frets, and they will have stopped and backed off just enough. Forgot to put that in. Just enough to make it play again, and they'll have stopped at that point. And that's your action, whether you like it or not. And you get the guitar, and there's no point. Usually, there's no point you trying to lower the action at all, because you'll just hit those problems straight away yourself, and it will buzz or choke. So. Here, yeah. So this is having control over it. Like I said, by the time I finished this process, the hard work of the setup is done. All that really remains after doing this fret leveling is to recrown these frets, because at the moment they have some flattened surfaces, obviously. So all that remains is to recrown them, to reshape them to a nice playable curved shape, and then to polish them out, and any other little bodywork or electrics repairs that we have to do at that point. But the basic setup now is completely done. We are making the neck accurate enough to play at the action we've chosen. So that's what I like about this method. It puts me in control. I get to choose the action, not the frets don't get to choose it. So if you are that critic, I do really encourage you to have a go. Okay, so I'm at 1 millimetre, which is lower than I want, so I'm just going to find my screwdriver, which is currently covered in oak wood filler for good reason. I'm just going to bring up this action just a fraction, action a fraction, because it is currently too low. So I'm going to counterclockwise it. That'll put it out of tune, obviously, and just a fraction back in. That's good, and this is good at the other side. So just a teeny weeny adjustment. go back to these bottom two strings and give them a little bit of going over because I'm not quite happy with them at the 1.3mm action that I've chosen. So I'm just going to rework these a tiny little bit, and I'm going to recalibrate each time just to make absolutely sure that I'm as close to the curve as possible, because that's what makes all the difference, is mapping this curve absolutely accurately. That's too far now. Very sensitive tool. I've described in detail in other videos how you know this is tuned right or calibrated correctly, and it's quite a difficult thing to describe, although it's very much a feel thing. And once you have practiced it, you get the feel, and you will get very good at it. And at the moment, getting that, it really all depends on getting that curve right. And once you've got that curve right, then a small amount of movement up and down inside the track that the string goes on, and then that's your leveling taking place within that curve. So to get it right, it's tricky, but it's really simple science. It just involves 3 points, and the fact that you can map a curve absolutely accurately with 3 points. As simple as that, and that's what these 3 little feet do. And once we've got them all touching exactly the same, and basically we've got ourselves a close. We've got ourselves the curve mapped absolutely perfectly. I'm going to do a tiny bit more on this one and then move to the E, and we'll be done. And then it's the sort of, it's kind of the, I suppose in surgery it's the wash up, scrub, you know, take all your stuff off, sew the patient up and clean up operation. And it takes some time, but it's not the precision bit, if you like. Well, on this guitar I've got to reposition one of the tuners to get that right. Okay, just push this out of the way. So we are pretty much almost done on the fret leveling. And the nice thing about doing this is, and I think the bit that I really wish commenters could listen to and get their heads around, is that when the owner of this guitar, Luke, comes to play it, they will recognise immediately, there's a piece of shot, they will immediately recognise the difference. Well, that's not tuned, but yeah, they'll know the difference, and that really is the proof of the pudding. It doesn't matter, any other theory doesn't matter. Okay. Yep, that's good for me. We are done. So you can see it's quite a bit of concentration and work and precision to get it right. I'm going to be doing this 3 times over between now and tomorrow afternoon to get it done. But there we are. We're ready to take these strings off now, clean up, take care of the tuner, drink my cup of tea. Thank you, my sweetie. My honeymoon bride.
How's it going?
Alright, brand new nut from a blank.
Oh.
New action.
So the strings aren't falling off.
No, frets levelled.
Great.
And ready now to do the clean-up stuff and reposition one of these tuners. And that's it for this one, but it'll take another hour or so before we get done.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Sounds all good.
Tis.
Young's asleep in your hat.
Okay. Oh yes, that's one of it's one of the things. Luke's not a cat person,
No.
so the cats are banned from guitar setups.
Sleeps in the flower bed there.
But interestingly, since we've come back from our honeymoon, Morris hasn't really bothered about coming in quality control. So I think he's given up as the quality control, although he's still the head of advertising and marketing.
He hasn't worked his notice out there, has he?
No.
But really.
He thinks he's got a lifetime of pay just by being the face of the brand. But that's fair enough. I'll let him off. Okay, so we're done with these strings, and I will throw them away because they've done their service, and we'll clean this up. That'll be the next stage. Now, where's a chopping thing? Okay. So this is typical Harley Benton. I was thinking, I've wanted to see one of these before. I'd never worked on a Harley Benton SG, although I've worked on a few Harley Bentons now, and they tend to be, in my experience, they tend to be pretty much the same all the way through. And actually, it hasn't really changed much in the last few years, or since they were producing them. And what I found about them, and I think a lot of other people also concur with this, is that they're pretty good basic guitars, but as you can see, they do require some considerable time and effort to set them up. And I suppose, where's the cloths? And I suppose that obviously that depends on, or assumes, or you've got to be able to do that work. If you can't do it, then you have to pay somebody, and then that becomes an extra cost. So, the truth is about this Harley Benton, it's 70 quid, and I wouldn't consider it to be very playable out of the box. It's very rough, and you can play it, but you can't have a low action, and that's not ideal from where I... Ooh. This has done that several times now on this spongy surface. I might have to lose the spongy surface. Anyway, but yeah, this is kind of consistent with the Harley Benton quality. Nothing surprising, even down to the slightly misplaced or out of position tuner, which I'm just going to sort out now because it's an annoying thing. Okay, I'll just make a note in my mind that the screws on the bridge face backwards. Now the good thing is it doesn't matter what I do with the action here. If I accidentally wind the trying to find the word for it, wind these in, more than they were, it's fine. All I have to do once I put them back on is wind them back up to the 1.5mm or 1.3mm on the bass side, and 1.1 or something like that on the treble side, and I have no worries about whether it will play or not. There's no surprises. I know it will play. It will go straight back to the setup we just had. So that's the beauty of doing it this way. I'm going to retire that cloth for the time being because it's too mucky. Okay, so while I'm here, and while you're here, let's have just a quick look. This one's out of place, and it's been badly installed, so I'm just going to take it out for a second, or undo the screw I should say, and then I'm going to undo the... I've lost something. Okay. I'm going to undo the nut on the other side. I'm just going to reposition it and see whether to reposition it I need to drill any more holes. Sometimes I might just get away with moving it and it won't cover up the hole. But I still need to get the screw out because I can't just move it with the screw in. Sorry, you're not even looking at the right thing. It's my fault. Different camera setup at the moment. Same camera, just a different bracket. Before I went away on honeymoon, I bought a load of sort of GoPro mounts, which were all a bit useless in the end. But wow. Now I've undone the wrong one, haven't I? That's why. It's the top E that's wonky. not the bottom one. So let's just do the bottom one back up. And also the top B has got some shards of string on it which are desperate to chop my or stick in my finger until I remove them. So let's just get those damn things out of here. This often happens when the string breaks, you get left with a little piece of string that doesn't want to come off and forever cuts your fingers. Sorry, boring. Okay, so got the right one now. Flip it over and just have a look how far out of place it is. Well, to be honest, it's more than a tiny bit. So to make this work, we're going to have to fill that hole, just to give it somewhere to grip when we remake the hole. This hole's a bit ragged too, but it's okay. So I'm going to fill that with a bit of cocktail stick or whatever it's called, toothpicky thing, and a bit of glue, because I want this to just be as filled in as possible so that we get yeah, it should work just nicely. Yeah, so we just got a bit of solid ground to drill a new hole in it. So now I'm always on the lookout for something. I need a little dish to put glue on. I never have it, and I always end up using a bit of tiny bit of sandpaper for a tiny bit of glue, really. I usually pour out more than I need. Wasteful. Anyway. Okay, so let's just try and put the top back on there. So I get my toothpick cut off. I'm just going to fill this with glue if I can before I push that in. And then with the end of this, I'm just going to tap it in a little bit and then cut it off fairly low for now and let that dry. Once that's dry, well, I don't have to do it now, I can get on. Yeah, when it's dry, then I'll re-drill a hole and reinstall the tuner in the right angle. So the next thing, in the meantime, just move the bits out of the way, it's just safety. Rubbish out of the way. The next thing is just to get on with the cleaning part of it, or the re-profiling of the frets, and that can all be done on this side. Now, to aid that process, I'm going to do a couple of things. Is that a bit of... no, I've cleared off. Going to cover over these, paint over these frets again with black marker pen, and this again acts as a guide to what's happening, but in a slightly different way than the last time. So the last time it showed us where we were levelling in the longitudinal, and this time it's going to show how far the concave file that we're using across the frets, how far it's cutting onto the fret and whether or not it's got to where it needs to get. And that's a really simple process, which I won't show you all of it, I'll just show you the kick off. We take our medium StuMac fret profiling, fret crowning file, there's so many different names. Anyway, it's a concave diamond coated file, and it works in such a way that when you rub it up and down on a fret that's been flattened, its curved surface cuts off the sharp edges and keeps wearing them down until you eventually the middle underside of this file will touch the top of the fret. Now you want to stop just before that happens, and a way of knowing that is to stop when you can just see the thinnest little line of marker pen down the centre of the fret. And if you can stop at that point, you know that you've rounded off the fret as much as possible, but without taking the height of it down, because of course you don't want to upset that nice level that you just put all the effort into getting, because that's critical to this whole thing. That's why we're doing this, so we can choose the action that we want. So I'm just using this tool. Now, where it's taken most material off, you'll have to do the most work, and in this case it's probably on the lower strings up at this point, but you can see it's fairly quick actually. If the fret hasn't been hardly touched, you'll just go across and all the pen will go immediately, and you just stop and don't do any more. So it's a very simple way of telling, and sometimes you'll see the strip of ink still there and you have to work it out. So pretty simple tool, and actually it's an expensive tool, and you can do it with a much cheaper set of tools, but it's quick and consistent, and it's usually what you get when you pay money for a decent quality tool. And a lot of people complain about StewMax tools being overpriced. Yeah, no, and they are expensive, but they are good quality. And sometimes if you're starting out in this process of doing guitars, sometimes having peace of mind from the outset with a decent quality tool is actually worth paying the extra money for. And it's kind of when you're least experienced that paying for the tool makes the most sense. In fact, when you've got more confidence and experience, you can probably get away with using using sort of cheaper tools and doing a more manual process. Okay, so we're almost there. The next part of the process, once this is done, will be to mask off the whole neck with masking tape, ready for the polishing process, which was where we take the sanded frets and turn them into a nice shiny playing surface. Now to do that, I'm going to just use cheap, important to have low tack masking tape, and then just go at it and cover all of the fretboard up. Obviously, as you get down a certain amount, you're going to need to cut thinner strips. And I've got a cutting board which I'll do that with, but I won't bore you with it. I'll do that off camera. So basically, covering it all up and creating a protective coating to keep your fret or your fingerboard safe from any sanding and so on. And while we're doing it, we'd also do this part of the body down here and the pickups. Okay, so I'll see you in a minute when that's all done. Just a quickie now. Next stage is to polish out. You can see I've protected the fingerboard now, and I'm going to use a series of papers. We're going to do 2 sheets at 600, 2 at 800, 2 at 1000 and 2 at 1200, and follow that up with a series of micro mesh papers, and by the end of that we'll be up to a playing standard. Okay, so this is just a bit boring and time consuming, so I'm not going to make you endure it. I'll come back to you when I've basically got the tuner back on in the right place, and I've got the strings back on the guitar, and we'll do the final stage, which will be setting the intonation. Righty-ho, time to restring. So everything's gone good. Bridge on, stop bar on, and here we go. I've oiled the fingerboard, I've repositioned the tuner, and we're away to load up with strings now. Heading towards the end, and really once we've loaded up we've only got intonation left to do. Well, stretching out the slack in the strings first and then the intonation, and that should be a lot. And ready to go. We then get on to the second of Luke's 3 guitars, and that one is the Epiphone 339 semi-acoustic, which is a very nice looking little semi-acoustic. Unfortunately, because this is so quick turnaround, I don't really have much time or any time to play the guitars and sort of get a sense of what they're like, but you know, it's just that's how it is. Now, a question I have with the Tunematic bridge on this Harley Benton is, am I fooling myself by leaving the saddles all switched, or sorry, leaving them in the position they are currently in, because I quite often find that I have to reverse 3 of them to get them to intonate properly. So we will find out. But so basically, to get this thing strung, I just load up the peg, run the string through, get it on its saddle, and then I'm going to pull back about just over a fret before I wind on. It's a matter of getting enough to hold and lock the string in place, but little enough not to store up too much unreleased stretch on the post. We want to kind of balance between the two, and that pull back is about the right sort of amount. And we got cut off. So I'm just literally putting these on, cutting them off, and then we go into the stretching process afterwards. As I say, I've got quite a heavy workload, so I'm moving as swiftly as I can, although this one added an extra hour when I had to make a custom nut for it, which I hadn't really anticipated, so running behind schedule. I'm hoping that the others will be trouble-free, but that's never the case really. So I've got a new nut coming tomorrow via the miracle of Sunday delivery on Amazon Prime. Thank heavens for that. It's a great service actually, and it's particularly for things like I found myself short of a black nut for Luke's Chapman, so being able to get one ordered quickly was a fantastic service. Okay, so doing the strings on the left side of the head is a little bit more back to fronty, ham-fisted-y, but similar process. Go round, attach, go once over the, I'm going once over the loose string and then once under the loose string as a sort of locking effect, which is good. Now that needs to come up onto the saddle and then cut off the excess. So as to the whole business of stretching strings, it's something that has to be done absolutely thoroughly if you want the guitar to play in tune, and it's the biggest enemy of the guitar playing in tune. Some people, I've said this quite a few times, but some people think tuning stability has to do something to do with tuners, which it doesn't. It's a bit counterintuitive to think that, and it's a misconception that, you know, cheap tuners equal the guitar going out of tune. It's practically never the case. The culprits that make your guitar go out of tune, play out of tune or stay out of tune are first of all unreleased slack in the strings, and that is without fail, there's a lot of it, and if you don't get it out at the beginning, then it will keep releasing itself when it's ready throughout the life of your playing, and that will always pretty much guaranteed to be when you don't want it to. So getting rid of the unreleased stretch is the most important thing of all. The second one is the quality of the nut slots. If they're sticking or too tight, they cause the strings to catch, and that will then store up slack effectively, and that slack will be released as soon as you bend the string and the guitar will be out of tune. Okay, before I do anything else, I'm just going to recheck the action. Remember I said that having done the fret leveling now, all I have to do is dial the action up to where I want it. It has gone down a little bit, so just going to take it out to 1.5 at this end. Well, not 1.5, too high now. In a bit, 1.4 or 3, 1.3-ish. Yeah, that's good. And then this end, blimey, that's a bit too small. 1.1-ish. Okay, so once we've set that, then we're kind of on track to get the guitar playing, but the first thing we want to do is to take the thumbs and fingers and stretch out these strings until you get all the slack you can possibly get out of them. It takes some force, and you have to be careful so you don't overstress them over the saddles, for example. There's a risk of breaking them. So you just got to be sort of sensible with it, but you're trying to stretch the string and the string on the rear to the back of the nut. There we go. Now, I can guarantee you probably, to release all the stretch, or the pent up stretch, the unreleased stretch here, you probably need to do this 4 or 5 times. So be prepared to put the time in now to make sure your guitar plays great from the outset, otherwise it'll just feel like it's going out of tune all the time and it'll spoil your enjoyment. So after the first stretch, I tend to tune it. Okay, so I've tuned it there, and you could probably play it. That's fine, but then get it and do it again. And, you know, plenty of force. Get all of the stretch out of the strings. Now, if you want to know how much stretch was in those strings still, listen to what happens in a moment when we check the tuning again and tune it back up. The amount it's gone out of tune is the amount, or it's part of the stretch that's held inside that string, whether it's stored up on the coil or whether it's in the length of the string. Either which way, it's what's going to get in the way of your guitar staying in tune. And the more you stretch it, the less it will be out of tune each time. Basically, if you really want to do this properly, you've got to go until there's no more slack to come out. So listen to the difference now. Okay, and again, I'm just going to do it 3 times now in total, and then I'm going to do a couple more other kinds of stretches. Make sure it's as stretched out as it can be. Bottom line is, the more you do it, the better, and really you want to be doing it until you can't get any more detuning out of it. That's what I aim to do, by whichever means I achieve it. And once we've done this, then we're in a position to do the intonation. We're going to do the intonation, set the intonation while the guitar tuning is bastard. While the guitar tuning is stable. That's the downside of doing this. Occasionally, this will happen, and you lose a string. Now that is a let's have this one. I've got some spare ones here, thankfully. I bought a whole set of, what do they call them? What's that? Rotor sound strings that came with extra top strings, and these are top E's in the 10s set, so I'm going to put this to work, thankfully. That's a good outcome. In fact, I've got quite a few there, so I can afford to break a few more. That's the only downside, that you run the risk of, when you stretch hard, you do run the risk of breaking the string, as I occasionally do. Now if I can just get this thing untangled, like to get on with it. Okay, this has got a bit of paper gone round it, so I'll clean it off. There we go. So this is now behind times in terms of stretching. Annoying note to self, don't break this one. So yeah, rotor sand gives you that extra string for free. As far as I can see, they're identical quality to the Only ball, but you get the extra, or some in most packs I think. Certainly you can buy the packs, standard packs have the extra top E, because they know people are going to break them more than anything else, as I do in the tuning. There we go. So you can hear it going out of tune straight away as we put it on. So I'll get rid of that. Hopefully, let's try not to break too many more, but can't help it if it does. Partly the result of, I guess, it broke at the peg end actually. I was going to say it could. You sometimes think that it would break at the bridge end where the these are really sharp, but in this case it's breaking at the peg end. The tuners on this aren't great. Now, what I mean by that is that they're just a bit grindy. They hold tune perfectly well, as on the point I just made about the tuners never being the things that actually cost you any tuning. But to operate, they're a little bit grindy. I can feel it. It just doesn't feel fantastic, and it doesn't make your experience of tuning terribly smooth. But they don't let it go out of tune. Okay, so I'm going to bend the strings. I'm not very good at bending tens, I have to say. But we're nearly at the stable tuning point now. So just keep going until you've got it stable. I'm just going to make a note, no pun intended, I'm just making a note that I heard the B pinging, right, and possibly one other, but that's a giveaway that the slot needs widening just slightly, and I'm going to do that with sandpaper, so I don't want to reduce the height of the slot or make it any deeper, reduce the height, increase the depth. I don't want to do that, but I want to make sure that the string passes smoothly through it. So I'm trying all of them, quite a range of down and up. That one's pinging slightly down this end, so it's not a problem at the nut. Do that. So that B is going to cause us tuning problems unless we take out the take care of that slight narrowness. And to do that, we're going to use the blade of the Stanley knife and a little bit of sandpaper. It's a bit of a grinding sounding tuner as well as anything else. So I'm just going to slack this off, and I'm going to take, not very scientific this, I'm going to take a blade which I think is pretty thin. I don't want it to be too wide. I know we're on a small gauge here, right? So with the, in fact I might even take the blade out and just with the sandpaper just go into that slot if you can, and if it's too narrow, no, it just goes in. I just want to pull from side to side to widen the slot. Now if I feel like it's not doing enough, what I'll do is I'll put another bit of paper inside the first bit. That seems a bit silly, but it's just enough to widen it up slightly, and I'll just kind of drag it from side to side a bit. All I want to do is widen it. I don't want to deepen it. And then I'm just going to go back and listen. Okay, and that's cured that. So now we've got okay, I'm happy with that. Next stage in the game before we finish is going to be the intonation, and for that I'm going to use my phone as a tuner, the amplifier as a sound source, and we could use, we could just as easily use any other kind of tuner unit, right down to, sorry, all the way up to, you know, expensive strobe type things. Now I'm going to use, so I think I'm using the tuner on the iPhone, because I've used it before and it does a pretty good job, and also because contrary to some people who get really iffy about the whole thing, God, this is hard to put these things on, it's actually quite a lot better than not doing it at all, and actually it's perfectly good for doing intonation. Some people are of the opinion, you know, that everything has to be pro this, pro that if you're going to do anything, and it's you can get a bit over the top about it. The truth is you can adequately intonate a guitar by ear. It's not important. It's not difficult if you can hear. If you're you know, relatively good at hearing notes, if you've got a good ear for notes. I think this might be back to front how we had it, but you can change it around. So yeah, you can do it by ear. So using a tuner on a phone is one step better. I always do this, drop the wire. And yeah, so one step better using the tuner on the phone, and then all the way up to proper, you know, big expensive units if you want to spend that kind of money. Now I don't have a plectrum right here for some reason, but you can probably see just looking at this now. What have we got a flathead screwdriver. Okay, you can see it's picking up just acoustically, but it's also, let's have a look at the sound. Still a bit of slack coming out. Ping on the B. Still going out of tune slightly, give it some more stretches. Okay, tiny bit of tweak needed on that B, nearly there. I'm going to give it one more quick. Don't want it to have any problem. This time I'm going to do it with tip of the blade. I'm going to shift across, give it as sharp as I can, and just do a bit of side to side movement. I'm also going to put some graphite in there. Okay, so let's go back to the intonation part, and let's get that done. Now the intonation, to put it simply, if your guitar is intonated correctly, which means, well, intonation I guess means making sure that each individual string on this guitar is the correct length for the neck that's fitted. Believe it or not, they all Each string has to be a slightly different length. Seems a bit odd, but it's the way it is. And they're only fractionally different, and they tend to be, it's because of the different thicknesses and the different compounds or the different makeup of the strings. So you tend to find that the saddles are set in 2 sets of 3, stepping backwards, forwards, then backwards. And if you see them in that shape, you know it's either just been preset like that or has been intonated at some point. So, a simple way of doing it is to take a note, start whichever note you want. Let's ping the 12th fret harmonic of an E. We want to tune the guitar to that, which is pretty much on. Now, if the string is the right length for this neck, when we fret the same note, which is the E at the 12th fret, instead of pinging the harmonic, they should be exactly the same note. You can see that, if anything, the fretted note is a fraction sharp. Now the first thing to say about this, when people talk about all the, you must use X, Y, Z expensive tuner, got to remember that all of this is pretty subjective isn't quite the word, but it's pretty inaccurate in the sense that it all depends on how hard you press the string anyway. So I'm trying to do an average, but if I want to press really hard, I can make it really sharp. So you can see that there's a variable in there which is a bit uncontrollable. So you're doing the best of a few. That's close enough. I'll come back to it if I need to. Still pinging on the B. Close. Close. Slightly flat. Flatter. Flatter. Okay, so flat means it's too short. Sorry, too long. Which means I need to push these forward. So I'm going to push all 3 of these forward a certain amount, starting with the D, if I can even get my thing in there. This is what, let's see when I start to froth, because I hate the Tune-o-matic bridge. I find it very, very stupidly designed. Now I have to get into these flathead screwdriver bits, and I have to now twist this to make the thing, forgotten, go forward. So counterclockwise is making it go forward, and you can see it's a bit of a clumsy system. Retune on the harmonic, and it's still a bit flat, so I'm going to counterclockwise it forward a little bit more. It's very, very crude as far as I'm concerned. So it's still slightly flat, which suggests it wants to go forward a bit more, which is, we've got a bit more room, but not a hell of a lot. Now I'm going to push the other 2 while I'm at it, because they are also out, and now this is where it's starting to get stiff and it becomes really difficult to do it, because you can't actually get to these screws with the strings on, and with the fact that the screws are exactly in line with the strings. So, if we're going to get, in fact, I'm going to just ease this off. push these or move these, it's not even the fact they're under load that's making them difficult. It's just a crap system that doesn't want to turn very easily. I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to try something else. I rather hate it. Where's the screwdriver gone? So I'm still going counterclockwise. And as you can see, I don't have any reach on that, so I'm going to take off the string altogether and just go in the counterclockwise direction if I can. It doesn't even want to go in. Talk about frustrating. You see how you can't actually get to, no matter what you do, you can't actually get to the damn thing. Stop bar's in the way, so it's just everything about it is awful. The stop bar's in the way, the string's directly in the way, you name it, stuff is in the way. Somebody couldn't have invented a worse thing if they tried. I'll go a bit further forward on the E, counterclockwise I should say. Okay, now I'm going to tighten them up and see what they come to. So this has got to come forward still. So what I hate having to do is have to just wind up and down these strings and move them around as much, especially with a system like this that just doesn't really want to move. It's not built to be adjusted in any sensible way. So personally I turn the bridge around. I prefer to have the screws on the other side. I find it a little bit easier getting into it from this end. It makes no difference at all. Other than easy to get to. Now I heard a bit of gripping on that E. call it stop on there. Just about got there. Still a tiny bit more stretch to do, and then we should be done. I've got a tiny little bit of sandpapering to do on the E, you heard that, and on the B, sorry, and on the D. Okay, going to stop there. Just a tiny little bit of sandpapering tweaks to do. So that's guitar number 1, the Harley Benton SG. Big fly. Chunky neck. Okay, there we go. See you for the next one.